Welcome back to another Writing Irish video log with me, Shane Saunders. Thank you so much to everybody so far who subscribed to the YouTube channel, has watched these videos, has read the website, downloaded the podcast, done anything with regards to viewership of the site. It's been mind-blowing, the views that we've gotten so far this year. Like I said, I do this as a part-time hobby, and I love doing these videos because it kind of takes the stress out of writing an article when I don't have time, because like I say, I've got a full-time job to contend with Monday to Friday. So doing these video logs really kind of helps and gives a different aspect to kind of a breakdown of a fight and stuff like that. And I especially love doing these Contender series fights because it's been such a good series, and I'm really I've been really enjoying the series so far. Love the fights and love doing these, and I love the reaction so far. So I mean, by all means, share, subscribe, do whatever. Just get more people viewing this, and get your own opinion down in the comments and whatnot, and we'll answer some questions along the way if any should arise. So usually, if you're new to this video log series of the Contender series, usually what I would do is I would go through the contract winners, I would discuss their fights, and I would then, break down the other kind of fights of the fighters who didn't get contracts. But I'm going to switch it up a little bit today because I really want to start at the very top of the card, the main event of the night, the main feature of the 6th episode of the Contender series, between Nick Newell and Alex Munoz. Sorry, I was going to say Mark Munoz, but obviously he's retired, long retired. But Alex Munoz against Nick Newell. Now, obviously, Alex Munoz won the fight against Nick Newell, but I really just want to focus on Newell for a moment, if I may. Just very inspirational guy for anybody with a disability. Just an incredible advocate for the sport. I mean, just in general good advocate for a disability. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have noticed. I mean, I'm fully blind in my right eye, and I'm short-sighted in my left eye. And for me, like, I just talk about MMA. I type about it. I write about it. I watch MMA. I only talk, write, whatever. I don't get into a cage to fight. But for anybody who does in general, has my utmost respect. But for anybody who's coming in there with a disadvantage like Nick Newell, coming into a fight with one arm, and to go out and compete at the highest level for so long, and have a 14-1 record prior to last night's defeat. Obviously, it's 14-2 now, but even still, a 14-2 record is nothing to be snipped at for any fighter. Ability, disability, whatever, and for him to go out there and really just put it all out on the line, it's just amazing. You're literally going out there, you have a disadvantage in that you've only got one hand to throw with, but the guy's got 9 submission victories on his record, which is phenomenal. Just a really, I was almost emotional watching him in the cage because, like I say, I've got a disability myself. And then reading the comments online, people just kind of writing him off, slagging him off, etc, etc. This is a guy who went in one arm, one hand, and fought Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is a really high-level guy. It takes a special type of individual to go in there against a guy like that and say, you know what, I'm going to put it all out there, and if I win this fight, God, it could have been easily Nick Newell in place of Justin Gaethje if the stars had aligned. It takes balls, and it takes absolute just sheer courage to do something like that, and I am forever indebted to anybody, and just incredible story. It just makes for incredible viewing. And look, win, lose or draw, Nick Newell is still an absolute hero. positive beacon of hope for people with disability to say, look, you don't have to be, limited in anything that you can do. I mean, it's amazing watching Paralympians compete in various sports. But for someone to go in as a professional mixed martial artist, like proper, under the unified rules, under everything, is staggering beyond words. And Nick Newell, you're a great guy. Win, lose or draw. I don't know if he's going to come back or not, because he did, essentially come out of retirement to take this fight. So, it's hard to know really where he goes next. But listen, there is no shame if he retires with a 14-2 record. The guy's amazing. The guy's brilliant. So I guess moving on. Actually, before we move on, I have to talk about Alex Munoz. I mean, he took the fight, and he did really well. He was a 4-0 fighter coming into the fight, and hadn't fought in 2 years. And I thought he did a really, really good job. He actually ate some big flying knees from Newell, but 2 or 3 times. Took Newell down to the mat, laid on a bit of ground and pound, and eventually ground out the victory. But I say kind of fair play to Munoz for accepting the fight, because listening back to a few of Newell's interviews prior, way before the Contender series, the main thing he said he struggled with was not his disability. It was actually finding a fighter who was willing to stand in there and compete with him. I mean, it's staggering, but eventually, to go in there and actually compete, win, and potentially bow out, I guess, at a high level kind of venue in the Contender series in front of Dana White, is good, and Munoz, while he did not get a contract, spoilers, a win is a win, especially in the Contender series, because again, I have to reiterate, these guys are fully trained up fighters fighting for a win that will reflect on their actual professional record. These are not exhibition fights like The Ultimate Fighter. So obviously these guys going in want to pad out their record. They want to get the experience. So, a important win, and a win over Nick Newell is a good feather in the cap to have. Like, Newell is well renowned as a mixed martial artist. So despite the fact that Munoz did not get a contract, it's a good solid win, and it's a big learning curve, especially after 2 years away. Some guys obviously take to it more than others, but Munoz did well, ground out a victory, and he moved on to 5-0, and who knows what could happen next. He could get called up. You just never know. But let's go through the contract winners anyway of episode 6 of season 2 of the Contender series. So winning contracts were Jim Crute, who beat Chris, I'm going to pronounce his name horribly, Chris Birchler by TKO in the very first round. We'll talk about this fight. We may as well talk about this fight. So Jim Crute, this really heavy-handed Australian middleweight, comes crashing out like a hare. Sorry, pardon me, like a greyhound from the traps, and he's trying to just land bombs on Birchler, and Birchler is just taking everything in his stride. He's landing a couple of counter punches too, and it's almost like watching Homer Simpson in that episode of The Simpsons taking a big beating from all these guys, and only for him to fight Dredrick Tatum in the end. But I mean, Crute was pushing forward, and he was just relentless in his attack, and he was winging punches, he was going for the body, he was feinting, he was kicking, he was doing everything, and seemingly couldn't put Birchler away. But it was a crushing big... So what happened was, Birchler was attempting to throw a counter punch and left himself a bit open, and Crute at the same time was punching for a right hook, and he just slammed his fist right into the jaw of Birchler. And if you saw the Anthony Smith and Shogun Hua fight on Sunday, it was a similar type of stagger that Shogun had when he was walking back towards the fence. Birchler was staggering. He was on the ropes, literally. And so referee Mark Smith decided to call a halt to the contest. And I saw a few people say that it was a premature stoppage. I didn't really think it was. I think it was. I like the stoppage. I think there should be more stoppages like these actually in the UFC. In MMA in general, to save fighters from further punishment, because they were showing the replays, and Birchler was wobbled. His hands were down by his side. There was nothing happening, and Crute was looking to land an extra bomb just to land him to basically flatten him out on the feet. And there was no way that Birchler was going to defend it. So Mark Smith did the right thing. Crute held off on the punch, and Birchler, is still able to stand. He recovers. Okay, he was given out to the referee saying he should have given me a chance. But at the end of the day, he saved himself from maybe one solid punch and maybe a couple of punches of ground and pound on the ground. So I think it was the right decision. Mark Smith, doesn't come out of it in any bad way, as far as I'm concerned. And Jim Crute gets a contract, and it was a very good showing. He looks powerful, and Bircher, fair play to him, has a hell of a chin in him, but he just got nailed when he wasn't expecting it. Like they always say, it's the punch you don't see that stuns you the most. So he obviously didn't see that punch coming when he was trying to throw a counter. So moving on then on the fight card, Sadiq Youssef against Mike Davis was probably one of my fights of the season so far. I mean, especially first round was just knock 'em, sock 'em robots for 5 minutes. It was just bonkers. I mean, Mike Davis is essentially a wrestler, but he's got so many knockout wins on his record. And in my article yesterday, previewing the card, I said that this fight could potentially be, the best on the card, and I feel vindicated in that I think it was, and it was a really good fight. Dana White there as well, pictured standing ovation at the end, so that's always good for the fighters involved. When it was a draw really, but it was great. I mean, Youssef was just landing bombs from all angles. Davis looked out, came back to recover, landed some of his own, and I mean Youssef did enough to really grind out the next 2 rounds, and okay, he didn't put Davis away, but it was a stunning fight. It was a stunning performance from both guys, really. But Youssef looked really, really solid. He looks ready-made for the UFC, and Mike Davis shouldn't go home discouraged from that. I think he looked pretty decent in that. Hey, look, if there's ever a short notice replacement fighter needed, Mike Davis could be the one who steps in there, because he brought it. The two of them brought it, and people can see now that Davis is a legitimately good striker, a legitimately good fighter. But Youssef is just a stronger brawler, and it was evident in that fight, and it was a really impressive performance. And if you haven't seen the fight, go back and definitely watch the first round at least, if you're going to watch any of it, because it was just human rock'em sock'em robots, and it was just brilliant viewing. It was just pure brawling. It's just great, just really, really solid striking match, and I really, really enjoyed it. And obviously Sadiq Youssef now gets a much coveted UFC contract, much like Jeff Hughes in the only heavyweight contest of the night. He beat Josh Aplett in the first round, and it was a very one-sided round. Well, while it lasted, it was a very one-sided fight. Aplett was doing his best to land a few kind of counter leg kicks to try and slow Hughes coming down before him, and it didn't work. They clinched, and Hughes was able to rip the body of Aplett several times, and Aplett was kind of always on the back foot, but it was a little kind of flurry against the cage, and followed by a huge right hook that grazed the top of Aplett's nose, and it looks like it's just smashed completely, and Youssef could do nothing. Aplett could do nothing but go down and hold his nose, and the referee called a halt to the action. And it was a really solid performance for Hughes. He did what he had to do against an opponent who didn't really kind of fight back as such. people might be disappointed, but the commentary team did allude to the fact that he is only really a part-time fighter. You know, a lot of family, you know, commitments and things like that. So, but he does actually train with Stipe Miocic, and you know, you can kind of see kind of where they're coming from. His footwork was good. He's a big guy, clearly heavy-handed. So he's going to make his way down to the UFC heavyweight division. Hard to know who they might put him up against, but yeah, look, you never know. I mean, it was a really nice fight, really nice performance. It was, you know, a highlight reel knockout, a walk-away knockout too. So that's him into the UFC, and also half a foot into the UFC was the first fight tonight between Chase Hooper and Kanan Kowaiti. Kowaiti? I apologize, I'm going to butcher his name. I'm just going to have to call him Kanan because I can't pronounce it. Hawaiian name. I just can't do it. But Chase Hooper, 18 years old. Kanan, 20 years old. Like, some of these young fighters coming in. Like, these are like the new breed of fighter coming in. And Kanan absolutely just rocked Chase Hooper straight off the bat. He just ran through him. And Hooper, I mean, for that age, has a chin on him. He ate several hard shots and just didn't go down. He was always looking for... He's always looking for a leg. He's always trying to lock up some sort of submission. It's quite clear that submissions in the ground game are his go-to. That's what he's best at. That's his skill set. And you know, he kept in the fight, kept in the round, and the round came over. But I mean, Kanan just gassed out completely in the second and third round. He was just basically on the mat. You know, just completely head, even in the corner, his head was down. He wasn't looking up. He was visibly just breathing heavily. And despite the fact that he took a huge beating in the first round, I mean, Hooper was able to somehow find this new lease of life, almost a bit like Frankie Edgar against Gray Maynard. Somehow finding a new lease of life to come back from a 10-8 round in the first round and come back and having nearly been finished to come back and draw the fight. But in this case, Chase Hooper actually won the fight by unanimous decision, and it was a frustratingly beautiful fight to watch. I say frustrating in the fact that Hooper could have easily finished the fight about 4 or 5 times. He was on. He took Kanan's back. He was laying down some vicious ground and pound, some nice hammer fists. He was always transitioning to improve the position, but kept on going for a submission. Every time the referee would come in and say, you know, defend yourself, Kanan, defend yourself, he would stop punching and try locking the submission. And Kanan was obviously moving. He lost the position a couple of times. It's just inexperience for someone who's 18 years old. It's just inexperience. That fight IQ will come. You know, I mean, you look back at tape and say, you know what, hey, I could have finished that here, 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 and here. Obviously, look, submissions, he wants to impress, he wants to show off his ground game, it's admirable. He looks like a good, solid fighter. But, I mean, look, that'll come in time, and he's not quite in the UFC, but he's now in a developmental program. I think Dana White said he'll be, you know, able to have access to all of the the UFC, you know, PI, Performance Institute, whatever, all the stuff there. They're going to work with him. I don't know what they're going to work with him on. Is he getting special coaching? I don't know. Are they going to give him a few fights? He could easily just come back on a Contender series and maybe fight again. I don't know, because Greg Hardy has a similar deal from beforehand, and now he's obviously coming back to fight on the Contender series in a couple of weeks' time. So I don't know what it really means, but you know, look, we'll see. He definitely want to keep an eye on Chase Hooper. Looks like a good prospect at only 18 years old. But that was those are the fights, and that was the episode. And you know, a really enjoyable night of fights. I think the right people got the contracts. I'm looking forward to seeing what Chase Hooper can do. I think, you know, in terms of standouts, yeah, he's definitely one for the future for sure. And Nick Newell, just a joy to watch. Just great athlete. I'm pleased I get to see him fight. I'm just in awe of his ability, and I'm glad the UFC kind of gave him a chance to compete, you know, on the card. But that's really it, guys. I mean, until next week's episode, season 7, guess just keep on looking at the website, guys. There's going to be a lot of previews up this week of UFC Calgary. Huge fight card between Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. The second fight between those two. It's going to be barn burner. Jeremy Stevens and Jose Aldo also on the card. I'll be in Tullamore on Sunday evening for Evolution Fighting Champion 6. And I'll also Wimpto Warrior finale that they're hosting down there will be on. So expect a video log on that. Maybe a couple of interviews for the podcast next week. So keep an eye on the site, guys. All the details will be down the bottom of the video. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, for subscribing, for telling your friends, for just genuinely being you. Until then, guys, have a good week and I'll see you next time.